Hello and welcome everyone to our virtual press conference featuring Michigan elected officials and electric vehicle advocates who have come together today to speak in support of significant investment in electric vehicles. I want to thank Moms Clean Air Force for sponsoring today's event. We are live streaming on their Facebook page where attendees can watch. We're also recording this event, so we'll have a recording after our event is finished. For our agenda today, we'll have 2 to 3 minutes of formal remarks for each of our speakers who will be visible and audible via their video. At the end of the formal remarks, we'll have a brief Q&A session where members of the media can raise their hand or use the chat function. I now want to introduce Elizabeth Heltman, Moms Clean Air Force, Michigan State Coordinator. Elizabeth, the microphone is yours.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our virtual event to advocate for electric school buses. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. My name is Elizabeth Heltman. I'm the Michigan organizer with Moms Clean Air Force. We are a community over 1 million moms and dads fighting for clean air and climate for the sake of our children's health and future. Electric buses clean up our air for our kids and communities. They also reduce carbon pollution, heating up the climate and threatening our future. We are gathered here today to call on Congress to pass bold climate legislation and meaningful investments in electrifying our school bus, transit, and trucking fleets to protect the health and future of our children and communities. And with that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Lieutenant Garland Gilchrist. Thank you.
Lieutenant Governor, apologize, I think your audio may be muted on your side.
It must be better right there, right?
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
There we go. You think we figured this out. So Elizabeth, I want to start by thanking you for your leadership. I got to say, Moms Clean Air Force is my favorite organization name ever. I think it's so great. And I'm so proud to be here with you for this really important conversation. And frankly, this historic moment that is before us when it comes to investing in the kinds of infrastructure and resources that will stabilize our climate, that will really strengthen our response to climate change. And just thank you for leading on the ground here in Michigan as part of that. I also want to thank Canton Township Supervisor Graham Hudak, who I know we'll hear from very soon, as well as Frank Houston from the Blue Green Alliance. And thank everyone who's joining us here this morning. Now more than ever, this is the time that we must take real and bold action toward combating climate change right here in Michigan and across the globe. In the past several weeks, right here in my hometown of Detroit, and the places surrounding it, we've experienced several historic storms that have resulted in extreme and devastating flooding. Our communities are starting to pick up the pieces and recover, and we support this. We appreciate the support we've gotten from the federal government and others on that. But the fact is, these once in 100 year, once in 500 year storms are happening now once every 5 years, once every 7 years, multiple times in a single year. It's not just in Detroit. We've had 2 historic flooding events here in the state of Michigan. We had one in May of last year in Midland, a once in 500 year event that led to dam failures and catastrophic challenges for the folks of Sanford, Michigan, Midland area, et cetera. This is not a coincidence. This, in fact, is a direct response to how climate change is really drastically impacting every aspect of our lives. Every day we do not take action to combat climate change costs us. And events like these will continue to wreak havoc on our communities across Michigan. We are facing a global climate crisis that will directly impact our environment, our economy, our people, with communities of color and low-income Michiganders suffering disproportionately. So this is why we must take bold action right now. We must update our infrastructure to mitigate future disasters that we know climate change will bring because of the way the climate's already changed. And Governor Whitmer and I are committed to fighting for a stronger, more sustainable future for our children and for future generations to come. Now, combating climate change is not a problem that just has a single solution. We have to explore all of the avenues to make sure that we are all doing our parts to protect our climate and future generations of the people of Michigan. And so one of those steps is modernizing our automotive industry in a way that supports our environment and puts Michiganders back to work. For decades, we have dreamt about what the future of mobility would look like, from the Jetsons to the DeLorean and Back to the Future. And while many people expect the world to be filled with flying cars and hoverboards, we have still seen significant investments in innovation in the types of technology that could unlock a broad range of possibilities around the future of how people get from point A to point B. And the intersection between technology and transportation, this is not new to Michigan. It's what we're all about. The importance of the automobile industry and the possibilities unlocked by technology have always, struck me and struck the people of our state, and in my career in particular, in the tech space. So I'm working toward the goal of ensuring that Michigan is doing everything we can to give us a competitive advantage and help solidify our position as the mobility capital of the world for generations, especially when it comes to electric vehicles. And I'm saying this as a plug-in hybrid driver myself. Literally the last 3 cars I've had have been plug-in hybrids. So that's why Governor Whitmer and I continue to make the case for connected, autonomous, shared, and electrified mobility. Vehicle electrification is the undercurrent of the future of mobility and a catalyst for the new jobs that will be created in Michigan's automotive sector. The governor and I have been deliberate in advancing our state's technology and transportation landscape in a way that improves public health and tackles climate change. As of March 1st, there were 24 electrification projects in the pipeline, accounting for more than $12.9 billion of new capital investment and 28,274 new jobs, which is a 383% increase year over year. We expect this increasing level of market activity only to continue. And we also recently announced a $4.2 million grant, which was paid for out of the Volkswagen mitigation settlement, to provide 17 electric buses in 7 school districts as part of the diesel bus replacement project. So what this shows is that when we push the boundaries of technology and transportation, we can create opportunities across a wide range of areas. Just this week, I toured electric charging stations for electric vehicles in northern Michigan and in the Upper Peninsula. Here in Michigan, we are working on increasing electric vehicle production, but also putting in place the infrastructure that allows Michiganders to feel confident in their vehicle getting to their destinations, wherever that may be. Investing in clean vehicles, expanding the market for electric school and transit buses, and building the infrastructure needed to support them will reduce dangerous pollution, create millions of manufacturing and construction jobs, and create economic opportunity for all. Investments in clean transportation are essential to meeting our nation's climate goals, reducing air pollution, improving public health, achieving true environmental justice, and spurring the economy. So when we talk about the future of mobility, we are not just talking about cars and buses and technology. We're talking about providing a higher quality of life to all Michiganders. And last but not least, I certainly want to acknowledge the bold actions that President Biden himself and the Biden-Harris administration announced yesterday, with a commitment to the electrification of our overall automotive landscape and the cars that we sell and that consumers drive. That is so exciting, and it is part of the bold agenda that, frankly, we in Michigan are proud to support from the Biden-Harris administration. That our congressional delegation is fighting for every single day, and we are eager to have Michigan be a full partner and put our full faith and force behind that movement. So thank you so much, and it's now my privilege to turn this over to Canton Township Supervisor Anne-Marie Graham-Hudat.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist. My name's Anne-Marie, and I'm the supervisor of Canton Township, the state's 2nd largest township, and we expect to be one of Michigan's top 10 largest municipalities after the census is released next month. Before I became supervisor, I was an automotive engineer for many years and worked as a sustainability engineer with Ford Motor Company. While in that role, I worked hard to publicly report on continual measures to reduce carbon emissions, which means reducing pollution from facilities. My work also resulted in the installation and operation of over 600 employee electric vehicle charging stations across the country. Not only did this encourage other Ford employees to purchase electric vehicles and therefore reduce their carbon footprint, but it also contributed to a reduction in pollution. The transportation sector is now the largest source of carbon pollution in the US. Supporting investments in clean transportation infrastructure is one of the best ways Congress can help fight climate change. The automotive companies have publicly announced their intentions to go to all electric vehicle production between 2030 and 2050, and we had to be prepared to take our residents into that future quickly. Governor Whitmer has announced a pledge to make Michigan carbon neutral by 2050, and every municipality, resident, every business has to do their part. As a supervisor of a 36 square mile township with over 58 miles of major roads, we need to go further and think bigger when it comes to making significant investments in electric vehicles, as well as the infrastructure. This will address the climate change crisis and environmental injustice that surrounds us. As Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist said, our storms are getting bigger and stronger and taxing our sewers and drains. Our infrastructure is bursting at the seams, as witnessed in our township by these last two major storms. But by investing in clean vehicles, expanding the market for electric vehicles and clean diesel school buses, we can contribute to reducing pollution, which affects climate change storms. Canton is dedicated to becoming part of the solution to a cleaner environment. Currently, Canton has 7 hybrid vehicles on order. We are creating a sustainability plan and are placing electric vehicle chargers at our municipal facilities for our residents. In addition to environmental and climate concerns, Michigan is still experiencing a brain drain. Our young people are leaving the state after they graduate. It is imperative we increase technology and infrastructure in Michigan. This not only creates jobs, but it keeps jobs here. This keeps our youth here. The investment in infrastructure creates millions of manufacturing, technology, and construction jobs. Keeping jobs and technology here in Michigan helps our residents far into the future. President Biden's initial infrastructure proposal includes these bold and ambitious investments through tax credits and investments in the country's EV infrastructure. We again thank Congresswoman Haley Stevens for continuing to support clean energy growth and investments in the electric vehicle market, which will improve public health, economic opportunity, and drive our residents into the future together. Thank you to Moms Clean Air Force and Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist. And I would now like to introduce my friend Frank Houston of the Blue Green Alliance.
Anne-Marie, appreciate that. Once again, Frank Houston, Blue Green Alliance. We're a coalition of many of the largest labor unions and environmental organizations in the country. And we basically work to take on the biggest environmental challenges of the day, like climate change, and do so in a way that retains and creates good jobs here at home. We really, as has been said by everyone, we have a truly generational opportunity right now to address not only existential crises like climate change, but really historic issues like economic, environmental, and racial injustice in the country as well. And we can do a huge part of doing all these things is just simply investing in the technologies and opportunities that are here for us right now today. When we talk about creating and sustaining good paying manufacturing jobs, this isn't theoretical. As the Lieutenant Governor referenced, and Anne-Marie obviously has a lot of experience doing it, we've proven it here in Michigan. We have over 70,000 people of the 288,000 or so that are developing the technologies and components and building the vehicles that we're talking about. And I'm going to post some stuff at the end of my comments in the chat, including a little map that goes through where auto suppliers and others are in Michigan and around the country that are doing the work we're talking about. As well as a few other reports. It's worth noting that we've seen the biggest increase in employment of any clean energy sector in electric and hybrid vehicles. And it's really just the start. Estimates are that we can create over 1 million manufacturing jobs in the auto industry here at home, good paying union jobs, by fully investing in the transition to electric vehicles and making sure we build those vehicles here. Additionally, when we talk about investing in EV charging infrastructure, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of jobs. And that doesn't even touch the fact that, here in Michigan, if we invested in even just updating our transmission and distribution systems, we could create another 10,000 jobs a year for 5 years. And I think anyone who has ever visited our local construction trades offices or seen the work they do, for instance, at the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW Local 58 in Detroit, they can tell you that we have the know-how, we have the talent, and we have the apprenticeship programs to make sure when we build this infrastructure, we do it right. And we can meet that demand head on. I'll also just say, I grew up here in southeastern Michigan, downriver from Detroit, where there's a lot of steelworkers. And I actually am represented by the United Steelworkers. I'm a member of them. And I can say we have steelworkers all throughout southeastern Michigan ready to build lightweight steel and aluminum for these vehicles. And as Anne-Marie referenced and could do far more justice than me, we have tons of creative, smart engineers and people who have been already designing efficient transmissions, turbocharged engines, electric power steering. I could go on, but just these technologies. And these are good paying jobs. And these are also jobs that are really making a difference in reducing pollution and taking on public health impacts like asthma that all of us could talk about, I'm sure, but let's just be honest. It's communities of color that have been forced historically to disproportionately carry the burdens of these issues like emphysema, asthma, and so on. So these are good jobs, and these jobs really make a big difference. I think I'll just close with a couple last things. The public support's here for this sort of investment that we're talking about. And we did a study and some polling this summer that shows that literally 90% of people in Michigan, and this is mirrored actually in 4 other upper Midwest states, the folks we surveyed said that repairing and modernizing the nation's physical infrastructure, including rebuilding and retooling American manufacturing, modernizing our factories to build products and technology in the US is important to them. And last, I'll say that we released a manufacturing platform last year, and I won't go through it today, obviously, but I will throw it in the chat. But the first pillar I think is important to edify, and that's that we need to invest at scale in a new generation of American manufacturing, and EV is just a tremendous opportunity to do that. We're not going to reap the benefits we're talking about today with half measures. So I just want to continue the call and echo the call that we need Congress to adopt strong, bold, significant investments in clean transportation. And I, for one, at least feel really lucky to have Congress members like Congressmember Stevens, who I know Haley's gets it. And I'm sure through her doing her manufacturing Mondays across her district the last few years, she's met so many of these folks. And I know we have so many members of the delegation that get it and are going to fight hard to make sure that we get those bold investments. Thanks. And with that, I'll turn over to Elizabeth.
Thank you, Frank. As mentioned earlier, my name is Elizabeth Heltman. I'm the field manager with Moms Clean Air Force. My son has asthma, and his disease is made worse by air pollution. Because of him and over 166,000 children in Michigan who suffer from asthma, we need to quickly transition away from buses that run on dirty diesel engines, spewing pollution that causes cancer, triggers asthma attacks, and makes climate change worse. We need to protect all the children from the nation's largest source of carbon pollution, tailpipe pollution. Children who ride diesel school buses are exposed to carcinogenic, asthma-causing pollution. The air quality inside a school bus can be several times worse than outside a bus. Children are more susceptible to the harms from pollution, given they're still developing respiratory systems and faster breathing rates. Children are also more impacted by air pollution for many reasons. They breathe more rapidly than adults, spend more time outdoors, and they're more physically active than adults, thus exposing their still developing lungs to more air pollution. Kids are also smaller, living closer to the ground than the rest of us, standing just about tailpipe high, where the concentration of pollution from trucks, cars, and buses is coming directly at them. My son had an asthma attack from being close to exhaust from a diesel polluting bus. As a mother who has seen far too often the panic and fear in her son's face as his chest tightens and he gasps to breathe, we must do more to protect him and the children who suffer from this chronic illness. Furthermore, childhood asthma rates are significantly higher for children of color. Latino children are twice as likely to die from asthma. Black children 10 times more likely to die from asthma than white non-Hispanic kids. These statistics make it abundantly clear that we need to shift to a zero-emission vehicle, especially buses, is an environmental and social justice issue. Our children deserve justice in every breath. That is why I'm grateful as a mother with a child with asthma that Congresswoman Haley Stevens supports a climate bill that supports EV infrastructure and electric school buses. Moms and your tiniest constituents are depending on you to move quickly towards bold actions in Congress. Thank you, and thank you to everyone on the panel.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and thank you to all of our speakers. As the end of our formal remarks portion of the event, we now have a few minutes for Q&A. For members of the media, if you have a question, you can use the raise your hand function to indicate you have a question, or you can also type that you have a question in the chat box. I can work through that and help moderate as we go. So please do not be shy. Our panelists are all excited to talk about electric vehicles in Michigan. Again, please feel free to use the chat function, or you can also use the raise your hand function to indicate if you have a question. Okay, we have a quiet group today. I understand. I think all of our panelists did such an excellent job. They answered all possible questions. Do definitely want to thank our elected officials, Lieutenant Governor, Supervisor. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. Greatly appreciate that. I also want to thank Moms Clean Air Force for hosting this event and live streaming the event on their Facebook page. That recording will be available immediately after, and we will be sending out a press release about an hour after this event that will have a link to that Facebook stream. Also, if you have any questions for any of our speakers, you can connect with Kurt Zellers, whose contact information was on the press advisory, as well as the media advisory that went out. I want to thank all of our panelists once again for their commitment to strong investment in electric vehicles. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.
Thanks again. Bye.